Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Pet Summit's Nutrition Summit live Q&A. I'm Dr. Judy Morgan, the host for the summit, and I am very lucky that Caroline Capobianco happens to be up here visiting from Florida. We're in North Carolina, and Caroline answers a lot of questions on our social media pages, monitors our community group. So she's up here visiting, and so I roped her into helping answer questions today. And it's also nice for those of you who do follow us to have a face and a name to put together. So this is Caroline. Now you know what Caroline looks like and who she is. So hopefully everyone had a great day watching the presentations today, and we'll go over what you're going to be hearing tomorrow as well. But today was a really great lineup, so we know that sometimes it can be hard to sit and watch 6 hours all in one day. Hello from Dublin, Ireland. Enjoying it so far. That's great. So, if you cannot watch all of these when they're live, then certainly there are packages where you can buy these so that you can have lifetime access. And I'm sure there's links posted to those, and we'll talk about those a little bit more as we move forward. So if you have from Atlanta. So if you have questions, feel free to post them in the chat, and Caroline and I will answer them to the best of our ability. And if you had a favorite session that you watched today, let us know what that favorite session was. We got California in the house. So we got people in time zones all over the place. So it's, 5 o'clock Eastern here. So, and I know that we've got someone from the Philippines helping monitor things, and it's 5:30 in the morning there. So, we're all over the place. It's a little crazy. And I'm sure for, Lisbon, Portugal. So Portugal and Ireland, they're like 5 hours ahead. So it's pretty late in the evening there, which is really interesting. I do consultations occasionally, not as many as I used to. And I had one family from Australia once. We gave them the time and they didn't question it. And it was 3 o'clock in the morning there. And I said, oh my gosh, you are like the best pet parent in the world that you are awake at 3 o'clock in the morning to talk to me about how to feed your dog. And I said, you could have asked for a different time. And they said, no, we were just so excited that we got in. So can the chat be listened to later as well? I do. Yes, Michelle, that is Caroline. I do not know the answer to that, but I think it would stay on 10 p.m. It would stay on the Facebook page, right? Yeah. So it'll be on the Facebook page. So you'll be able to go back and watch it later if you can't listen to the whole thing. So I know that we had some amazing speakers today. So like I said, if you had a favorite, let us know who that was. But we had Dr. Susan Borer from Chi Dog, and we want to thank Chi Dog for being a sponsor for the summit, because it's really hard to run these things unless we have sponsors. But Chi Dog is, they are all about TCVM food therapy, which is kind of my thing. That's what I like to talk about that more than anything else. And actually, Caroline's kind of nerded out on it too. So yes, we do a lot of work with TCVM food therapy. And so I'm sure that Dr. Susan Borer gave you a nice intro into TCVM and whole foods and creating harmony and balance within the body using those whole foods. But just a little FYI, we have a TCVM Food Therapy 101 and 201 course on Dr. Judy U, which is our learning platform. So drjudyu.com, if you want to dive deeper into TCVM food therapy, that would be a great place to do that. And then also on our Facebook groups and community groups, a lot of people ask questions about that. Caroline does a lot of moderating on those groups. So, but like I said, she likes to nerd out on that stuff. Yeah, it's
my jam.
It is. Once you start really looking at TCVM, it's like, oh my gosh, I can like change my dog's personality. I can get rid of, the panting and the excess heat. I can help them walk better. It's just so many things that we can change just by using food. And that's the cool thing. Like, I know you use it for your own dog.
Okay.
So is your dog a hot dog?
Hot dog.
Hot dog. Coonhound.
Coonhound.
Yeah.
Always busy, always running around like the Energizer Bunny.
Yeah. So he's a hot dog. So Caroline uses cooling foods for him. What did you say he's eating this week?
He's currently eating muskrat.
Muskrat. So, you know, we can really go out on a limb, and he also has some allergy and GI issues and other things going on. So he gets a lot of weird proteins. Have you done beaver?
Yes. Yep.
So all kinds of weird things. All right. Absolutely love Dr. Connor Brady so much. Connor is probably my favorite. Like, he's funny.
Yes.
And he's so brilliant. So dang smart. Okay, these are zooming by me. I guess see if I can go back up.
Tina's got a good question.
All right, let's see. What's the best homemade diet for a dog with elevated liver enzymes and elevated lipase? What not to feed, what should feed, making 100% natural foods, but want to make sure I'm not missing something. So that's great that you're making homemade food. And the elevated liver enzymes, if we're going to look at it from a TCBM standpoint, we want to drain the liver. So got a few favorites for that. Dandelion greens are amazing. Asparagus, radishes, celery. Any other favorites?
Mushrooms.
Mushrooms are really good. So those are things that I would be including in the diet. You can also, if you don't want to do it completely with food, you could add like dandelion tinctures, milk thistle, those kinds of things. I actually grew milk thistle the first year in our garden. It's a beautiful plant. It's huge and it makes these big purple flowers. And unfortunately, the garden bugs love to eat it. I can't remember which bug just attacked it. And so I used a natural solution to kill the bugs and I accidentally killed the plant. So anyway, but milk thistle is a beautiful plant if you want to grow your own and make your own tinctures and harvest it and all that. But it is very thorny. It's kind of difficult to harvest. All right. So what else do we have here? All the speakers were fabulous. Connor actually almost stayed with his time limit. Yeah, Connor struggles. All right, Caroline rocks. She's so helpful. There you go.
Thank you.
My golden retriever has allergies to chicken and shellfish. I home cook her food and how to make it complete with substitutes for these foods. So chicken's easy to substitute. You can, if they're allergic to chicken, they're probably not allergic to turkey and duck and other poultry. Like each one is their own animal. Mm-hmm. And you certainly could pick, I mean, there's so many protein sources like beaver and muskrat, if you want to go out on a limb. Cod works really well. Shellfish, that's where you have a little bit of a bigger problem because zinc is really difficult to get the levels that we need. We can get it in beef liver, so that's a good source. And beef is a better source than chicken is for zinc. Wheatgrass is a pretty good zinc source. You'll get a little bit in kelp and some other sea products. But you may end up, and we don't like to use any kind of synthetic supplement, but this might be one of those where you might need to use a zinc capsule. And depending on the size of the dog, you may only need a capsule a couple of times a week, a 15 milligram capsule. But the zinc is going to be probably the hardest. Yeah, with that. So. Hi from Pennsylvania. In one of the talks, it mentions medicine that suppresses the immune system. My dog is currently on Apoquel. Yep, that's one of those. So, and Apoquel, we do know predisposes them to developing cancer. So, we have a couple of blogs on Apoquel. So there are tons of things that you can use for allergies. Almost all allergies go back to leaky gut. And Julianne Lee, who talked on dog gut health today, she was talking about probiotics. But we have a free webinar on Dr. Judy Yu on leaky gut syndrome that Julianne Lee did. So you might want to check that out because allergies are really related to leaky gut. It's swelling and inflammation in the gut, and it's allowing proteins to get into the bloodstream that normally would not be able to get there. So we do need to fix the bowel. And so probiotics are going to be part of that. Draining the liver is going to be part of that. And then we certainly want to try to wean off that Apoquel. if at all possible, which we do have a very allergic dog here in the office that belongs to one of our employees. And she spent a lot of years on Apoquel and Cytopoint, and she has managed to get her off, but it can be a long process. And particularly when you have environmental allergies that play into that as well. Quercetin is a great anti-allergy. Dr. Connor Brady has a course on allergies on Dr. Judy U. So that might be something that you want to check out as well. We have a lot of blogs on that, a lot of information in my books, particularly Keeping Your Pets Naturally Healthy. That book has a big old chapter on allergies. It's probably one of the biggest chapters in there, with a lot of ideas for, healing the gut, and then looking at your diet, testing, and then making diets and adding supplements to try to help them, because there's a lot of things that we can do. Unfortunately, what happens many times, they get put on Apoquel, and then they also get put on a hydrolyzed kibble diet, which they only work about 50% of the time, and they are really bad for the gut instead of being good for the gut. So we're not healing the underlying problem. And that, I think, is the biggest problem with traditional medicine. We aren't trying to solve the cause. We're putting Band-Aids on the symptoms.
Just masking it.
Yeah. So Apoquel does not, all it does is suppress the immune system. It really masks the symptoms. And Cytopoint is really masking symptoms. And then we have a lot of side effects from these drugs. So we really recommend trying to get off them. So we have tons of information on it. Just do a little digging on the website, drjudymorgan.com. Seems there are many whole pet food companies' resources geared for dogs. What resources are there to learn about cat nutrition? Interesting. You should ask that. We actually, and I know this is pretty much a dog summit, but we have a course on nutrition for cats, and we also have recipes on our free recipes that you can download on our website for cats. We have some for kidney problems, heart problems. We have a recipe for cat loaf, which is sort of the equivalent of the dog pup loaf. And cat loaf is actually available commercially now through All Provide. There are some other good cat companies. Steve's Raw Food has Quest.
Raised Right makes cat food.
Who does?
Raised Right.
Raised Right has cat food. So there are quite a few good companies out there now, but we do have recipes if you want to try making your own. Just remember that cats are pickier. Cats don't like leftovers. So if you want to make food in big batches, they really don't like leftover food. They're really smart. So I would try just, cooking some fresh things and seeing what they like. But yeah, we've got a ton of stuff for kitty cats, and there are, in my Keeping Your Pets Naturally Healthy, there are quite a few recipes for kitty cats in there as well. We've got 2 Clumber Spaniels from Australia. Is that Terry? Might be. What can I add to home cooked meal to balance the zinc using Balance It, but I keep coming up low? Yeah, I'm not a fan of Balance It. It's a bunch of synthetics, although, so zinc, 15 milligram capsules, zinc picolinate is one of them. Because for instance, the RX Vitamins K9 Minerals is made to balance homemade diets with the minerals. It has no zinc in it, which I didn't realize for a long time. And I finally looked at it and I'm like, well, crap, that's not even balancing it. There's no zinc. So yeah, zinc is hard. So that is the one thing, like even in my recipes, I'll say, okay, well, you can use an ounce of oysters or you can use a zinc capsule. And I think, and there probably are some liquid zinc products out there where you wouldn't have to give the full 15 milligrams. You're not going to hurt them with the excess, but they don't really need that much. So that's why I say a couple capsules a week is probably going to be plenty. All right. Anything to avoid with liver lipase elevated? Heard no beef or pork. How about salmon? And how about organs and cow liver? So thank you. It really depends. So the lipase is a pancreatic enzyme, and if it's extremely elevated, it could be related to a simmering pancreatitis, and the pancreas sits right next to the liver. So if we have elevated liver enzymes and elevated lipase, we've got inflammation in that area of the gut. So certainly Chinese herbs could be used for that. Acupuncture could be used for that. Salmon might work. Cod probably would work better. Yes, you can use organs. There's no reason not to use organs. Like treats like from a Chinese medicine perspective. So I like to use some liver. We tend to not go ever above 10% liver in the diet, but you might do 5%. Depending on what's going on. And, you don't know, could you potentially have an underlying copper storage disease or something else going on that's contributing to that? And I guess part of what I would be concerned about is how symptomatic is the dog and how high are the levels? Are they minor? Are they screaming high? And have you done anything to try to bring them down? Like adored beast liver tonic would be one thing, but a milk thistle, a dandelion tincture, something like that. So beef can be very good with liver, but with liver issues, but it also is a fattier meat. So we've got the lipase elevated as well. And I just think of it as a heavier meat, slower to digest. And so when we have these elevated liver enzymes from a Chinese medicine perspective, we probably have liver qi stagnation, which is energy that's stuck. And when that energy is stuck and stagnant, we'll get swelling. And the swelling in the liver causes the cells to swell and leak. And that's why we get those enzymes going up. I'm a huge fan of pork, lean pork. My dogs eat a ton of pork. But you could use turkey. You could use beaver and muskrat would be great. Rabbit is very lean and easy to digest, good chi tonic. So that would be good as well. So I can't across the board say no beef or pork. Beef, I have one dog who tends to get acid reflux and regurg, and she just can't. Beef is just too heavy. It sits there and she just can't tolerate it. So that would be my thoughts on that. Can I squirrel away from food and ask about pesky ear mites? I don't care. Why do we have ear mites? Well, you're in Australia. We shouldn't have ear mites in our dogs. And my question is, are they actually mites or do you have a yeast infection? Because they're going to look very similar. It's going to be a black, like with the ear mites, they're really, well, actually even with yeast, they can be really itchy. But with the ear mites, you get a black, crumbly, dirty stuff out of the ears. And with yeast, it's usually going to be more of a moist discharge that's in there.
Gummy and sticky. And
if we have Clumber Spaniels, we probably have yeast. They've got big, heavy ears. They don't get your air circulation in there. Spaniels tend to have yeasty ear problems, and that is almost always allergies, and it's almost always food. It's really funny. Oh gosh, back in the 1990s, my practices were very close to University of Pennsylvania vet school. And I had a client who took their dog there for something. And they came back and they said, the university says that his chronic yeasty ear infections are related to his diet and it's a food allergy. And I went, really? Oh my gosh, traditional vets are noticing what we're noticing. Thank you so much. So I would be more likely thinking you've got yeast, which yeast likes to grow in warm, dark, moist environments. Mm-hmm. Well, hanging heavy ears on a cock or any kind of a spaniel.
Yep.
Yeah, it's pretty much
perfect breeding ground.
Warm, dark, moist. Well, actually for coonhounds too. It's warm, dark, and moist, and they're heavy. Yeah. So, a lot of times I just tell people, look, you got to open up the ears. So tie them up over their head for an hour and let them get some air to them. Clip the hair on the inside. Be very careful what you're using for cleaning. So I really like witch hazel because it doesn't burn and it's drying. Alcohol burns, and water or hydrogen peroxide leaves moisture in the ear because peroxide breaks down to hydrogen and water. Mm-hmm. So you're leaving water in the ear. We don't want a moist environment. We want a dry environment. So if you look at human swimmers' eardrops, they're almost always alcohol.
Yep.
Except if you have an ulcerated ear, you're going to get bitten. They burn. So I really like witch hazel because it's drying, and that can work really well. I think this is the one that was in Australia, so I don't know what products you have available there, but witch hazel by itself is great for cleaning and drying. Said no to the hydrolyzed at the vet, strictly raw fed. Perfect. Good for you. Stick to your guns. What can you feed a dog with seizures to help? I make all homemade. He's a Rottweiler. So Rottweiler. So we'll go back to our TCVM. See, you guys can talk TCVM all day. What's that one got, Caroline? What's his personality?
Probably a wood personality.
Wood personality. And what are they prone to?
Seizures.
Liver chi stagnation.
That's mine. That's mine.
So all those things that we talked about for the liver chi stagnation, and there's an herb, Chinese herb that you may be able to come across called Ditan Tong, Ditan Tang. That works. Almost all seizure dogs should be on that. Then usually we'll combine it with some other herbs, but things like milk thistle and dandelion, we really want to drain that liver chi stagnation. It's a Rottie. It's going to be a wood personality. The wood personalities are, you don't want to back them into a corner. You don't want to try to use brutocane is what we call it, to force them to do what you want them to do. You want to ask them nicely and hope that they want to. Yeah. And that's why these make such really good guard dogs and working dogs, because if they're provoked, they're going to let you know that that's not what you do. But that's I'm a wood personality. So by the way, I'm not dissing Rottweilers, and I had Dobermans for a long time. I actually had a Rottweiler for a while, and I'm a wood personality. I'm a really great person unless you provoke me. Yeah. And then I'm coming out like this to let you have it.
Push too far.
Yeah. And I have horrible liver chi stagnation. And so the main time of the liver is 1 to 3 a.m. So I wake up when I'm having a lot of stagnation and angst. I wake up between 1 and 3 o'clock in the morning. My brain's like doing this, and I'm all tense, and my blood pressure's probably through the roof. So it would be interesting to know, does your dog have seizures in the middle of the night? Because that's when it's at its most active, and it might. So anyway, I would drain that liver for sure. Your dog keeps, yes?
You also have a great blog on your website on seizures.
Oh, I do. Yes. That talks about that and talks about the herbs. So drjudymorgan.com, there's a blog on there on seizures. I'm sure I've done a bunch of videos on it somewhere too. Okay. My dog keeps eating dirt, digs a hole, eats the dirt ever since puppy. Now it's 3 years old. Should I be concerned that her meals will not balance? Potentially. It could be a dog. It's more than likely, well, two things. Either you've got a heavy metal deficiency like iron, magnesium, manganese, zinc. So it could be something along those lines. I used to have a Cocker Spaniel that when we adopted him, he had a really bad case of hookworms. And so that makes them anemic and their iron drops. And iron is not tested normally on the lab work. So he might just be saying, hey, my iron levels are low. You could, on his lab work, you could look at the hemoglobin and see whether maybe that's a little bit low. Maybe this guy needs a little bit of an amino acid, B vitamin supplement. But those would be things that I would look at. Is he a little bit anemic? Is his hemoglobin a little low? Is his iron a little low? That's where I would start. But he also, depending on how healthy your soil is, he might be looking for soil probiotics. Because, so here's an interesting little tidbit. I had an old flower pot that I wanted to put a new plant in, and it had beautiful, rich garden soil from last year in the pot, and then the big root ball from last year's plant. So I took it off my patio and I dumped it over the fence into my donkey paddock. And the donkeys came running over to see what wonderful delicacy I was dropping over there. And they picked up the root ball and kind of shook it around and played with it. And then there was all this beautiful, dark, black soil. And they stood there and ate every bit of the soil. I've got donkeys eating dirt. And I know that my soil in their paddock is very deficient. It's dead soil. That we actually bought probiotics to put on the soil. So it's dead soil. So I know that they are missing what their gut needs. They need either that probiotic or they're needing those minerals. So that's what I would look at. I would start with maybe getting a soil-based probiotic, something like the Adored Beast Phytos Flora, or we have the Symbiota. Look for a soil-based probiotic that has humic and fulvic acid and see if that helps. Because it could be any of those things that the dog is looking for. So
also, I would say a good thing to look into might be the hair tissue mineral analysis for that.
Yes. So Dr. Ava Frick today talked about testing for nutritional deficiencies with hair and blood samples, and the hair sample actually is going to be less expensive and give you more information. So you might want to look into something like that. I think we actually have a link, and she may have a link for a gift on here. I'm not sure. But you might want to look at doing that. That's a really good point, doing the hair analysis, because you're going to get a lot more minerals. And then if you haven't checked a stool sample, definitely have a stool sample check to make sure that there aren't any intestinal parasites that might be draining some of that nutrition that the dog is looking for. Are dehydrated fruits and veggies considered fresh and whole foods? Well, they're slightly processed in that they're dried. But I would still consider it a whole food. Now, if you're dehydrating them, that's great. If you're buying, especially dehydrated fruits at the grocery store, make sure that they are not treated with sulfites as a preservative or have sugar in them as a preservative. So if you're dehydrating your own, that is awesome. Or if you're buying them without, just be a really good label reader. But if you in the middle of winter, you can't get the fresh fruits and veggies where you are, then something that's dehydrated, it's going to be fine. I mean, basically you're missing the moisture. Yeah. So not a big deal. How does chicken compare to a red meat like beef for dogs and cats to be consuming? Well, they have totally different nutritional profiles. And actually, when you're feeding chicken, and depending on whether you're feeding dark meat or white meat, that's going to have different nutritional profiles. So the dark meat is a lot richer, has more blood supply versus the white meat, which is leaner. So they actually are very, very different. Calorie wise, beef is going to be much more calorie dense. Even if you're using the lean beef, it's going to be more calorie dense. However, with chicken, if you're making your own, if you're including the skin, the calorie density goes way up. So it just kind of depends. And it just depends what works better for your pet. Chicken is easier to digest than beef is, kind of like it is with us. So for my own dogs, it's rotation. So this morning might be chicken, and tonight might be rabbit, and tomorrow might be pork, and then it's something different. They're not eating muskrat though, but it's something different all the time. I go through ground quail sometimes. Yeah. And that's another way to get zinc in the diet.
Yep.
Hair and feathers, fur and feathers. So like ground whole rabbit or ground whole quail with the feathers, or ground whole chicken, whatever fowl you're feeding. That's another zinc source. Some people get kind of wigged out about feeding that, but it's a fiber source. It's a mineral source. So I like it when I do the whole ground quail or the whole ground rabbit. It's not in their meals every week, but thank you. avafrick.com life extend method. Okay, very cool. So yeah, the mineral analysis is a great way to find out what's going on. All right, do you guys have any suggestions on suppliers of different proteins, good quality, struggling with finding them at the grocery store? Yeah, that's a huge issue. So everybody kind of has their favorites, but you're getting your muskrat from?
My Pet Carnivore.
And then there's Raw Feeding Miami.
Hair Today
up in Pennsylvania. I think, does OC Raw have weird things too?
No, not really.
Not really. Okay, there's quite a
few. Solely Raw is another
Raw?
one. They have some weird ones. That's my next go-to. They have antelope. and some other things. Fetching Foods is another good one that has some oddball proteins.
Yeah, Hair Today has some oddballs. They have llama,
Alpaca,
guinea pig,
yep,
goat. So they've got some quail. They've got some, and they have rabbit. They have weird things too. So all of these are online places that ship it frozen to you. So as long as you have a little bit of freezer space, we do that. Like my daughter ordered a big thing. It might have been from My Pet Carnivore, but it had a beaver tail.
Yeah, that's My Pet Carnivore.
Yeah. And I was like, what are we doing with a beaver tail? So I'm feeding it to my dogs. Great chew toy. Beaver tail. So I don't know. I opened the freezer and there was weird things in there. So, all right. What are my thoughts on spirulina and chlorella supplementation? Awesome. Really awesome, particularly for those wood dogs, those things where we've got to drain the liver a little bit. And actually my naturopath today, he's like, are you taking your spirulina? Yes, I am.
Also good for trace minerals.
Yeah. Yep, exactly. So yeah, you're not going to go wrong supplementing those for sure.
Also good for detox.
Yep. Drain that liver. 11-year-old lab who's a poop eater, clean the yard daily. I got poop eaters at my house too. We're rural. There are other dogs and animals fed Steve's real food. He's super healthy except for this. Any suggestions? So for some of them, it truly is just a really disgusting bad habit. I find that if I'm using a soil-based probiotic and if their gut health is really perfect, they're much less likely to eat the poop. And mine kind of go in cycles. Like my dog, my 16-and-a-half-year-old dog who has bladder cancer and heart disease and some, doesn't absorb his food very well, struggles to keep his vitamin D levels up. He's a poop eater. And it's because his health is struggling with a lot of different things that his body is doing. So when they are eating another dog's poop, just consider that he's doing a fecal transplant himself. And it's really interesting because if you have, I have 5 dogs, and the poop eaters gravitate toward the poop of certain dogs. They don't indiscriminately poop. They're kind of looking for certain things. So, like I said, some of them, it truly is a bad habit, but you might, go through, look at a soil-based probiotic, look at maybe running through a leaky gut protocol or some sort of a detox protocol, and see if that helps. Because mine kind of go in cycles and I can kind of tell, like the one who's trying to eat the poop probably just pooped something that didn't look so healthy. And when their poop kind of starts going south, I know they're going to go look to do a fecal transplant from somebody whose poop looks better. So, sometimes it's self-selection for what they need. It's just disgusting, really disgusting. And then please don't come lick me in the face after that. Okay. Your dog is allergic to chicken, turkey, anything bird. Is it okay to feed a diet more based on beef? Yeah, sure. You can feed beef. You can feed pork. You can feed rabbit. I mean, there are muskrat, beaver, goat. There are so many other things that you can feed. So like I said, I really like to rotate, but maybe your dog just is not going to tolerate anything that is a fowl. And that's fine. Just, still try to rotate through other things. I mean, mentioned venison, and that's pretty common. Yeah. Like Steve's makes a whitefish. So, there's a lot of different options out there. And even in the beef realm, we've got bison. Which is leaner. So, it just really depends on, and if your dog does well on beef, that's great. Me personally, I would still be adding in some other, like maybe add some sardines or add some eggs if the dog can tolerate eggs. And usually if they're allergic to the meat, they still can tolerate the eggs. So I would, kind of look at some other things that we could put in there. Can you use coconut oil to fight itchiness? Absolutely. You can put it in the ears. You can feed it. Well, you can feed it. You can rub it in the coat. You can use coconut oil for just about anything. It's amazing stuff. It's also anti-flea. So using it topically in the coat and feeding it, the fleas don't like the taste of the coconut oil. So that works really well. Do you have to add supplements if the dog food you make is balanced? Been making it for my dogs for 3 years and all the labs coming back normal, even on 12-year-old. That's great. You don't have to add supplements. So my dogs are fed complete and balanced meals, and I still add supplements. So my dogs are prone to heart disease and they have murmurs. So they get CoQ10 because that is so good for heart problems. All of my dogs are on a low dose vitamin D supplement and my one with cancer is on a higher dose vitamin D supplement because they all tested low, even on a complete and balanced diet. So when you say that you're making a balanced diet, that means on paper, unless you're testing every batch at a lab, on paper, it says it's balanced. But that doesn't necessarily mean that your dog has 100% of what they need, because they may or may not be absorbing well. Like my cancer dog does not absorb and convert the vitamin D. That's why he's always low. So he gets a higher supplement. So my recommendation is, have your dog's vitamin D levels tested. You can have vitamin B levels tested, but I don't worry about those as much unless they're having some GI issues. You can test B12 and folate. VDI Labs has a 15% off discount on their lab testing products in our drjudymorgan.com store. So the code is VDI Labs 2024. I'm sure that's in your notes and emails that you're getting. But so vitamin D should be tested every 6 to 12 months. And then I really like testing something like the hair mineral analysis. That'll let you know, have my diets been balanced? Is there too much or too little of something? Because with hair, you're getting a long-term picture. You're not getting a, what are we doing right now? Vitamin D, that's also more of a long-term picture because it takes a long time. They tell you not to even retest for at least 4 months because it takes a long time for it to change. So, and I add, I don't know why that just did that. I add fish oil for my dogs just as a natural anti-inflammatory. I add PEA as a natural anti-inflammatory. So there's a lot of supplements, even if the diet's balanced. Probiotics you might be rotating through. So, do you need to add vitamin mineral supplements? Probably not. But again, testing. Yeah. Do add calcium supplement and fish oil. Yeah, that's fine. And you're going to need that calcium to get your levels up. Use 75% protein, 25% dog safe fruits and veggies, and 5% of the protein is, I don't know what that is. I think that's a mistype. Yeah, that's fine. I tend to be very meat and organ heavy and low on my fruits and veggies. That's how I formulate. I don't use any grains for my dogs. So, all right. What about eating grass? 2 dogs are always chomping. They don't throw up. They may be missing something. They may need the fiber, which is a great prebiotic. Greens are really good for the liver. They're draining. So there can be lots of reasons. Sometimes
they just like it.
Yeah, they tend to really like, especially in the spring, the fresh new grass. And really interesting, our pets are really good at self-selecting. So I was sitting outside the other day and I have herb pots all over the place because I really like growing herbs. And so my two of my English toy spaniels were over with their noses in the pots of herbs. And so they stuck their nose in the dill and went, me. And then they went next to the oregano and they're like, ooh, that kind of smells good. And they started nibbling a little bit. And then they went to the next pot and it had lemon balm and sage. The sage, they're like, we don't care. The lemon balm, they were chowing down. And I was like, oh, isn't that interesting? Lemon balm for GI upset and anxiety. Look at you guys. Self-selecting. So, if you feel like having fun, you can plant an herb garden and let your dogs out there and see what they do. One of my Dobermans once, I was trying to plant yarrow and he was pulling it out and eating it as fast as I was putting it in. I gave up. He ate it all. GI upset, bleeding issues. Yeah, he went to town on it. I was like, all right, we're done with that. He also pulled up all my radishes and ate them, drained his liver. They know. So if your dogs go out in the garden and they're, like starting to nibble on stuff, pay attention to what they're nibbling. And, then look it up and what does that do? There may be a good reason why they're doing that. So, girl, whip it. with 1 year, suddenly she lost some weight, homemade, raw fed, holistic vet thinks it might be an imbalance in her hormones. Any specific foods? So, look at what you're feeding. You might need to increase the fat content on her food if she can tolerate it. If she is intact, she could have some hormones that are changing things. And sometimes, when they go through a heat cycle, they don't eat as well. You could try adding some digestive enzymes to her diet and see if that helps her process things a little bit better. And if this is only a 1-year-old dog, I mean, if she's acting normal, playful, no vomiting, no diarrhea, we don't get too concerned. But if the stools are going south and getting runny, look at enzyme deficiencies. If there's vomiting and diarrhea, then maybe testing for Addison's. But if she's acting normal and just a little thin, you can increase calories, you can increase the fat content, maybe try a digestive enzyme. Do I trust the mail-in DNA tests out there for dogs? Well, there's a lot of good ones. I think we have links to a couple on our website. But there are some. I read an article not too long ago. It was in one of the major newspapers where they sent human cheek swabs into dog DNA testing companies and got back that, one person was Great Dane pug. So, so they had 2 human samples that were sent out to companies that came back as dogs. And then they sent them to a lot of companies, and all the other companies were like, we don't find any dog DNA in here. So there are good companies out there. And I really like some of these companies that are doing the genetic testing. So a lot of breeders are using those genetic tests because they can test. I just did an interview with somebody the other day about it. A lot of them can test for hundreds of genetic issues to know whether your dog is a carrier. Mm-hmm. As a matter of fact, my sister is at a corgi show, and she just they had a lecture there by somebody who does this DNA testing, and they were talking about degenerative myelopathy, which is a huge problem in the corgis, and talking about whether they were carriers or were going to be affected based on whether they had the genes. And I think that can be really, really good. Yeah. So yeah, I think a good company is a good company, a bad company is a bad one. So just get online and put in your search engine, testing the DNA testing companies. Yeah. Find out which are good. All right, let's see. We are on Darwin's kidney diets, only beef. Should we rotate other foods that are not kidney specific, but adding phosphine? Depends how the dog is doing, and depends what stage of kidney disease they're in. If it's stage 1 or stage 2, you can rotate in some other things. I do have balanced kidney diet recipes as free downloads on the website, and they're also in the Keeping Your Pets Naturally Healthy. There's kidney diets in there. So it really depends what stage the dog is in. But, stage 4, we got to be real careful. Stage 3, kind of careful. 1 and 2, whatever. as long as it is a high moisture diet. And if you're adding phosphine, then I'm thinking you're already getting some elevated phosphorus levels. So, just look at that, and good diets from good companies, they should have on the website, not just, so like when you buy food, they're required to put on the label the protein, fat, moisture, and ash, I think are the 4 things. They don't have to put the carbohydrate content. And they don't have to give you anything like the phosphorus, copper, zinc, all that. But the good companies on their website, there'll be a link somewhere on there where you can click and see the complete analysis of the food. So you'll be able to compare. Like, let's say, you're on a website for a company and they have 5 different diets. They have a beef, a turkey, a chicken, a rabbit, and a pork. Okay, look at the nutritional analysis on each one of them. Which one has the lowest phosphorus content? Because that's really what you're worried about with a kidney dog. So look at the phosphorus and the protein content and pick the one that's the lowest, and you'll probably still be fine if the dog is not in really, really advanced stages. All right. Feeding your Cavapoo, Viva Raw, Evermore, add in probiotic, omega-3, Gussie's Gut, Bug Off, Barks and Whiskers, adrenal glandular supports. Wondering if I'm overdoing with the supplements. Sounds great to me. Because I pretty much do probiotic, omega-3, Your probiotic, I don't know what that is in Gussie's gut, maybe doubling up there. Bug off garlic is fine. Adrenal glandular support, good stuff. You know, I don't know how old your dog is or if you're dealing with any, you know, if the dog is spayed or neutered. Having some glandular support is always good. Thank you for the VDI lab code. Organ meat, good. All right, all normal, just looks very skinny, also because of the breed, still waiting for her first season. Oh, cool. All right. Well, at that age, like my youngest Cavalier, Forrest, he just turned 3 a couple weeks ago. And he probably weighs 11 pounds now, but he stayed at 9 to 10 pounds. He's a pretty normal sized Cavalier, but he is so active and he was so skinny. And he was eating, he still is. Well, I backed him down a little bit. He was eating 16 ounces of food a day. We're talking 9-pound dog. 16 ounces should feed a 50-pound dog. It took 16 ounces a day to keep him still skinny because he's so active. Now that he hit 3, we're down to maybe 12 ounces a day, but he still maintains it 10 or 11 pounds. So it, you know, the youngsters, their metabolism is really high. Don't worry about it. You know, it's the Forest. I kept saying, oh my gosh, this dog's gonna, like, if a stranger saw him, they'd say, why don't you feed this dog? So actually, Katie was just saying, Katie works here doing video work for us, and she has a pointer. And I think the dog's weight is pretty ideal. Mm-hmm. On a scale of 1 to 9, we want them to be a 5-ish. And I would say that her dog is a 4.5. Pretty ideal. But she says people stop her all the time telling her she needs to feed her dog and she's abusing the dog and it's too skinny. And that's just the way the dog is. She's well fed, well cared for, and she's really pretty ideal. Most people, and that was something you should have gotten out of Matthew Muir's body condition scoring today if you didn't watch that. Most people will overestimate where their dogs are. So you may have a dog that's a 9 and you call it a 7, and then your veterinarian goes, yeah, you're really a 9. Or you call them a 5 and it's like, yeah, really it's a 7. So, you know, most of us would look at a dog who is ideal and we would say it was too thin. Mm-hmm. It's just how we are, particularly in America. I don't know about other countries, but I know here. Yeah. We tend to underestimate where they are. So let's see, what else have we got here? Is Naraquin a good phosphate binder? Wondering if there's better options. Stage 2. I'm surprised you need a phosphate binder at stage 2, but you know, you've got to base it on the lab work. And I don't know that brand. Do you know Naraquin? Yeah, I have not heard of that brand. I don't know if you're in a different country, but I have not heard of Naraquin, so I'm afraid I cannot speak to that. I apologize. Thoughts on goat milk or tripe with kidney issues? So tripe is amazing because it is low phosphorus. Of all meat proteins, tripe is going to be the lowest phosphorus. And so the best calcium phosphorus ratio. So a lot of, I had one poor pet owner, her dog was in late stage 3 when she came to me, and this was many years ago. And I said, I'm really sorry, but we need to make a diet for this dog that is kidney and tripe. It is going to stunk. Stunk. Mm-hmm. And she fed that dog her kidney and tripe diet that she made for over a year. The dog did great and it stunk. And she said, I don't care. I've got my dog. My dog's eating. My dog feels good. So yeah, tripe is amazing. And goat milk can be fine as well. You know, you're gonna have a little more phosphorus in there, and so I would just monitor that, but it's not really unbalanced. So I'd be fine with it. Which is more beneficial and less harmful for dogs to eat, grains or lentils and legumes? I don't use any of those in any of my diets. So, you know, and there's this whole question about whether legumes, which lentils really fall under, whether legumes interfere with absorption of taurine. There's no proof. We don't really know. So the jury's still out on that. But I don't feed any of those to my dogs. So for instance, a dog who has kidney disease, when I had my Stewart, his heart was bad and then the drugs made his kidneys bad. And so I needed to lower the protein in his diet. Well, we have 3 ways to do that. We've got protein, carbohydrates, and fats. So if you're going to lower your protein, that leaves you carbs and fats. Okay. Well, they also tend to get a little pancreatic trouble. So raising our fats a whole lot gets a little tricky. So that leaves us carbs. What are you going to use for your carbs? Well, we can use grains. We can use legumes. And those are not, thank you, Joey. Those are not my choice. I went with sweet potato. And it worked great because his potassium was low. Sweet potato is a good natural source of potassium. Potassium came right up. We lowered his protein, added sweet potato, and he did great. So I don't use grains. Now, from a Chinese medicine perspective, can grains be beneficial? Absolutely. They all have their own purposes. So, for instance, oats are warming and they're a chi tonic. If you have an old dog, and I always like to reference my grandmother when I do these. I don't know why. But if you have an old dog who really has a hard time getting moving in the morning and they don't even want to get out of bed till 11 o'clock and they're not even going to consider eating anything until noon when the sun is up and we're warming up and they've moved around a little bit, you know what the best thing is for them in the morning? A bowl of oatmeal. What does our grandmother tell us on a cold winter morning to get ourselves moving and it's going to stick to your ribs? Have a bowl of oatmeal. So would I never use grains? No, I can't say that. But I use them when I have a specific purpose that I would need them for. I haven't really found specific purposes for lentils and peas. I've never put them in a diet. I really, literally, I've never put them in a diet. But I have used like brown rice or oats or barley or millet. Occasionally, barley is the opposite of the oats. It's cooling, it's draining, so it can be very good for dogs with kidney disease who have hot kidney disease versus cold kidney disease. So, all right, 3-year-old intact female was having pork uterine organs, and then she started milking, stopped it and never again. Since it's a secreting organ, is there a method that I could feed that? I have never had anyone feed that. You go. That's amazing. Because that is really hard to source unless you have your own pig farm or process your own pig. I guess I could have gotten it.
Places like Raw Feeding Miami sell that kind of stuff.
Do they really?
Yep. You can get ovaries and testes and.
Well, those are great to feed once in a while. But yeah, I would say there was too much hormone in that for your dog. So I would feed a lot less if I was going to feed it.
Make it more a rotational thing, not all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, that you're just getting too much hormone in there. It's like when we see the dogs that have very high thyroid levels, it's because thyroid gland is being fed to them, whether it's purposely or inadvertently, but it's being fed. Cavalier diagnosed stage 2 MVD, borderline kidney when making heart-focused diets from the yin and yang. Should I be lowering protein and or salt? Nope. Nope, you're fine. Yeah. Borderline kidney disease, I mean, you're probably stage 1. It's probably negligible. You don't really need to modify anything at that point. Any thoughts about Honest Kitchen brand dog food? Use it sometime when funds are low. Is a complete, yes, it is a complete diet. It's higher in carbohydrates than I generally feed. My sister's been feeding Honest Kitchen to her dogs for 20 years. They do fine. It's a complete diet. It just has more carbs in it for the most part than what I feed my dogs, but it is something that and that's why the price point's a little bit lower because it's got more carbs in it. Protein is the most expensive ingredient in food. And so that's why when we look at dry kibble, it's got a lot of carbs in there and very little. I mean, they have a high protein content, but very little that's coming from meat. And that's because that's the most expensive part. Okay, so we got a few minutes left. We're going to do a little bit of housekeeping. All right, so if you found this to be valuable, please tune in for the live. Caroline and I will be here for the next 3 nights as well. You can still subscribe to get the premium package. So the price is going to go up to $129 when the summit ends. Currently, it's $59 to get the lifetime access to the recordings. And for $199, you get even better stuff. You get online access to our Dog Longevity Made Easy online course on Dr. Judy U. Otherwise, you can pay for it separate if you'd like to. And you also will get the recording of my flagship course, Food Therapy for Dogs, which was $249 when we did it live. Caroline was a moderator on it, so she can tell you. So for the $199, you get a lot more stuff. And then, like I said, there are free gifts and the 15% off the VDI Labs products on drjudymorgan.com using VDI Labs 2024. And let's see, tomorrow you are getting even more good stuff. Dr. Megan Barrett, she lives in Hawaii. I have spoken with her personally. She's written a book, From Basic to Bougie, Upgrade Your Dog's Diet. So she's going to talk about harmful effects of processed diets, talk about mindset shifts, how you can switch from, what may not be the best food to getting to a little bit better place. And tracking dietary changes in health. So, and then Dr. Ian Billinghurst, if you don't listen to anything else tomorrow, listen to Dr. Ian because he is amazing. He's from Australia. He is the original BARF, bones and raw feeding guy. He pretty much brought this to light with his original book, Feed Your Dog a Bone. And what's the second one? He's amazing. So he's going to talk about biologically appropriate raw food diets, BARF, bones and raw feeding, BARF. He's funny because he says, man, why I came up with the acronym BARF. It seems silly, but anyway, his is really good. Dr. Katie Woodley, also amazing. Why vets don't like raw feeding. How to feed bones safely, food safety and balanced diets, debunking some common myths. So if you have a veterinarian who hates raw feeding, you might want to listen to this so that you have a little bit of ammunition next time you go in and say, hey, I feed raw. And they go, oh my gosh, you're going to kill your whole family. Dr. Nick Thompson is going to talk about are vegan diets good for pets? Yeah, be a fly on the wall for that one because let me just tell you, he's not a fan.
No, not at all.
Not a fan.
I love listening to him.
And Nick is like Connor. He's from England and he is amazing to listen to. He's funny. He's brilliant. Has trouble keeping within his time frames as well. And then also Hannah Mandelbaum, demystifying organic pet food, what it means to say that a food is organic, clearing up confusing and deceptive marketing claims around organic, and the importance of the organic label on a food and how ingredient sourcing can impact your dogs and your own health. There's a lot of misconception about what an organic label means. So yeah, definitely worth listening to. So Michelle says, my TCVM food therapy course is awesome. Can't wait for Dr. Nick. That's great. Yeah, definitely check out the courses on Dr. Judy U. There's a lot there. We've got 4 courses by Dr. Connor Brady on behavior, allergies, myths behind what dogs eat, and then who are the pet food police. In Dr. Connor style,
Yes.
you know that's good. We have Dr. Ava Frick's hair mineral analysis. Chelsea Kent and Dr. Matthew Muir, who had sessions today. We have them interviews with them on our podcasts. So on Dr. Judy U, you can also search for our different podcasts and listen to those. Those are free to listen to and download. And like I said, there's a free leaky gut webinar by by Julianne Lee that if you have a dog with allergies or you think they have GI issues, that's great to listen to. And then we do have the full TCVM food therapy course if you liked what Dr. Susan Borer was talking about today. So tons and tons and tons of valuable information available for you. And the lifetime access to these videos is really, really valuable because sometimes you miss 1 or 2 or 3. Not many of us have 6 hours a day that we can, 5 days in a row dedicate to listening to these things. So kind of nice when you can say, oh, well, I know I've got it in there and I can listen to it when I have a spare minute and I don't have to like hang at my computer all day. So,
or there's so much information packed into each one of these talks. It's really helpful to just have it on hand and go back and listen to it again and again, because you'll miss things the first time through.
Exactly. I have a lab course on understanding your pet's lab work and their lab values. And I was talking to somebody the other day who sent me her lab work. And I said, well, there's a big problem here. And her vet, of course, called it normal. And I said, no, there's a big problem here. And so I was explaining it. And she said, ugh, I've got to go back and rewatch that in the lab course, you know, because I said it's in there, and she said I guess I missed it, or I didn't remember it, and so she's got lifetime access to it. And so after we had our conversation, she's like, all right, I'm going back and watch it again. And then the next day we had a different conversation because she had been able to watch it again. So definitely worthwhile watching those. So when is it too early to give heart medication like pimabendum and azapril to dogs in B2? I would not start them too early. You've got to wait till you've got heart enlargement and an echocardiogram for sure. So premium plan is totally worth it. Well, that's good to hear. Yeah, it is. It totally is. And somebody says, I feed my bird a vegan diet. And that's who should eat the vegan diet, the bird. If you want a vegan pet, get a guinea pig. Yeah. They're amazing. We used to have them. I had rabbits and guinea pigs, hamsters. The whole, yeah, you have kids, you have it all. All right. Are we in charge of
signing off
this, or is Gindi? I think Gindi is. I don't think we are. I think we're passengers on the ship today.
We are.
It's not a bad place to be. We don't have to be in charge.
Nancy has a super nice comment. Thank you, Nancy.
We appreciate you both. You've helped my dogs live their best life. Aw, thank you.
That's great to hear.
Yeah, we try. We work hard at it. It is something that it has to be your passion. Otherwise we're not doing it. But it is our passion. So we're happy to help. So thank you for watching. Thank you for tuning in. And definitely check into, if it's 59 now and it's going up to 129, that's a good deal.